Hello, I'm Christy, your local teen librarian, and I'm back for our third installment of Virtual Writing Club. We are putting on this series in tandem with our 1,000-word short story contest where you can win up to $100. If you haven't submitted, you can go ahead and submit. We have the link down below. You can also shoot myself or Dawn an email if you want some revisions before you submit your final piece. The deadline is November 1st at midnight, so you still have some time to get in there. Last week we talked about fan fiction, where we walked through the what if prompt. I did post my fan fiction in our Discord if you wanted to give it a read. If not, that's totally fine. I will understand. My feelings will not be hurt. If you want to post your own writing, you can go ahead and check it out to the Discord. We will put the link down below as well. And we have a spot for writing if you just want to show what you've written. This week we will be going over writing styles. We will be covering 7 of them in this video. We have narrative, descriptive, expository, persuasive, compare and contrast, reflective, and personal. Follow along and I will go over each of them in detail. Narrative writing is often used to explain a story or an experience. The narrator is usually the person telling what's going on. It can be a first-person narrator where you are telling the story. I went to the store, I went to chemistry class with my friend, and he showed up. That's the type of narrative writing. The other types of narrative writing would be things like Harry Potter or most fantasy books that you read. They are told in a third-person narrative style where it's talking about a bunch of people doing a thing, and you usually only get to see I and me when the characters are talking or thinking out loud. Next, we have descriptive writing. So descriptive writing is, like it sounds, describing what's going on. You want to have this in your writing to get your reader more engaged. Instead of saying that the character walked in a room, the character walked in a sunlit room. She could feel the warmth on her face as she stood in front of the window. That just feels so much more inviting and makes you feel a bit more like you're actually there. You can be describing something the character's experiencing, or maybe it's the first time this character has seen a monster, so you're just getting the grotesqueness of the rotting flesh, the skin falling off the bone. I almost threw up. That's a pretty good description. When you are using descriptive writing, you want to focus on the 5 senses. You have sight, smell, taste, touch, and sound. So, toss in a couple of those and it will always elevate your writing. We have another example of the sun rose above the valley, or the golden orb ascended upon its blue throne, illuminating the vast valley, the morning dew glistening like diamonds sparkling in the sunlight. So I talked about sight most of the time in that, but you could have talked about the cool breeze that you feel in the morning or the smell of dew. Those are 2 different ways to add it. Or you can also talk about how wet your shoes become as you walk through the grass. Adding at least 2 senses to something really does elevate what's going on, and it makes the reader more engaged because it feels like they are experiencing it as well. Thirdly, we have expository writing or exposition. This is when you're pretty much building your world. Say you have a magical world. Is everyone in the world magical, or is it only some people? Can you lose your magic powers if you don't practice? That's stuff you have to explain, and that's what you use expository writing for. You are most likely familiar with this when you get either instructions or if you've been reading a textbook. That's mostly expository writing because they are explaining something. You are an expert and you need to teach whoever's reading the information. You can use that in writing, and that is a great way to explain what's going on. You can toss in little details, just comments that explain how the world works. That's a great way to elevate what's going on, and it also helps your reader understand the rules of the world. We also have persuasive writing. This is where you are trying to get your audience, your reader, to either agree or disagree with you. So you'll see this type of writing in an editorial or a column or an advice piece. That's usually where someone is trying to convince you to agree with them. Persuasive writing is really good for commercials or if you want to sell something. That's one of the main things you can use, but you can also use persuasive writing in argumentative pieces or in tandem with our next topic, which is compare contrast, which is when you are looking at 2 either similar things or different things, and you are trying to compare how they are the same or how they are different. It depends on what you're doing. Usually persuasive and compare and contrast can be used together in a commercial. We all know that meme of, look at your man, look at me, I'm on a horse. It's a fun one that we've seen around a lot, and that is an example of compare and contrast. It's not always the best example because they just kind of take things out of nowhere, but that's what makes it funny. Reflective writing can be used to summarize an event. You can have your character reflect upon what happened and even chastise themselves for not realizing something that was so obvious at the time. For example, say you're having the prince write his experience at the ball. You could have him spend lots of detail and time talking about how angelic Cinderella looked on the stairs and how much fun he had. And then you could have him kicking himself for not asking her name. Did he not ask her name because he was afraid that the magic would last? Or was it just something he didn't think was important at the time? That kind of says a lot. So you can work with that and see where you go from there. But reflective writing is a great way to get your character to reevaluate a situation. And you can get more characterization from them to see, did they really handle it well? Were those some gut reactions coming out and they knew better and they should have said something else? Lastly, we have personal writing. This is usually seen in journals or diaries, and it's a great way for someone to look back on something or explain their side of events. This can be a fun way to write, and this is how I chose to write that Luigi's Mansion fanfiction, because I wanted to explain everything that was going on, but I wanted to be able to jump around to just the parts that really impacted Luigi. So instead of writing in a third person, I would have had a novel if I had written and set up everything where he goes through the whole game and finding everything and working up all those pieces. So for the fanfiction that I wrote last week, I chose to use the personal style. And this was just because it was easier to get everything I wanted to convey out through a personal letter. So he's writing a letter to his mom and he's just explaining everything that happened in the past couple days as he's gone through and cleared out this mansion. I got to throw in how there was a rule where Mario and Luigi just kind of said that if we don't show up in an hour, just go on. Because in that world, it happens so many times they get called into missions or just on an adventure. So that's one of the things I brought up. But we also got to hear, as he was going through the mansion, just how things felt familiar when he found the diary of Maria Mario. One of the things he commented on was the amount of ink on the page, because both Maria and Luigi were left-handed, and when you write left-handed, things tend to smudge a bit more. So it was just different things that he could talk about. And then I ended it going where Luigi's asking his mom, is there anything you have to tell me? So it's a great open-ended of this was kind of a lot for him, and this is how he's dealing with it. He is writing a letter to his mom to just ground himself and figure out everything that's going on. When using the personal writing style, you can still give away things about your narrator. So one of the things that we talk about in The Great Gatsby is Nick says that he is a reliable narrator. And pretty much if you have to say that you're truthful, then that means there's people saying that you aren't. So keep in mind what your character has to say or what they decide to fixate on. If your character is impatient, have them complain about how long they had to wait for their friend and how their friend is always late and you always have to plan extra time for that. It's a great way of showing that not only is your character impatient, but their friend is always late. And this constantly happens. All right, so our prompt for this week will be a sentence starter. So I'm going to give you 2 different sentence starters you can use with. The first one will be, I didn't think the house was actually haunted until. And then the other one will be, the monster that lives in my closet is very. So you just have to use either of those to start the story, and then you get to go from there. Maybe the monster in your closet isn't so scary and he's your best pal. Maybe you didn't think the house was haunted until you actually saw some ghost from the Inquisition pop up. It doesn't matter what you want to write, but just practice writing. The more you practice, the better you'll get. I know I said that last video, but just writing is the first step to being a better writer. All right, thank you all for joining us for our virtual writing club. Next week, we will have Miss Dawn, and she's going to go over some poetry tips. Like always, you can find us on Discord. You can stop in the sandbox at the Zion Benton Public Library. That's where you'll find me, Miss Dawn. And if not, check out our new teen space. Maybe it's a new cool place to come and write. And don't forget that on October 31st, Halloween, it is a Tuesday, we will be doing a virtual poetry slam. If you want us to perform one of your poems, go ahead and let us know. If you want to perform it yourself, you can let us know as well. But we just have the Poetry Slam at the end of the month, and that's right before the end of the short story contest. I hope to read some great things from you guys, and we'll see you next week.